Hi there. I bet you didn't think you'd be talking to me so soon, did you? What can I say? I am stupid. I am a glorious mess. We're going to work with it. So, the last video that I did on this channel, I talked about what a time suck making these videos can be for, very little gratification on my end. But the fact of the matter is that's just not true. I want to talk about things. I want to talk about books. I want to talk about the horror genre. And as I got through the first 2 months of this year, it is March 1st right now, and happy March. We are now in the third month of 2024. And I found that I still want to talk. So even if I'm just talking to myself, we're still going to do this. So hi, even if it's just me, hi self, here to talk about books. So I've been reading, and January is always kind of a big reading month for me. It's getting started back into things. Some things are still kind of cooking and not ready to be actively worked on yet. And to be perfectly honest, I am still recovering from the holidays. So I spend a lot of time reading every January, and I got a lot of reading done. Got quite a bit of reading done in February as well, and I have things to talk about. And so far, I have not read a book that I actively disliked yet. We're off to a really good start. There were a couple where I'm kind of like, meh, kind of middling about. So I'm not going to talk about those, but I have an opportunity to spread joy and talk great things about some horror books. Not all of them. We have one that's a kind of an outlier here. But, in the interest of lifting up indie horror writers, why not? So, some great books that I read that I want to share with you. Before we start, I also want to say I'm not great about reading new releases while they're still considered new releases. I like to buy them to support the author, but I don't necessarily read them. So some of these are a few years old at this point. But the good news to that is, in the indie publishing scene, there's so much stuff coming out so fast that a lot of these books, after they're considered new, they're forgotten. So maybe we can breathe a little new air into these. If you heard about it before and maybe didn't get around to buying some of these books, maybe try these on my recommendation. You trust me, right? So the first book I want to talk about is The Poisoner's Last Ride by Kenzie Jennings. And I have to say, I am a freak for Kenzie Jennings. I love her stuff. I haven't read even a middling thing from her yet. I have loved everything. Now, I'm recommending The Poisoner's Last Ride, but I'm going to triple recommend her short story collection, Always Listen to Her Hurt. If I didn't get that right, I'll put that below. But that is an amazing short story collection. Now, The Poisoner's Last Ride it's a very, very short book. I got through it in an afternoon. This book is something about Kenzie as a writer is she's able to maintain an intensity throughout. And in a shorter work like this, it works to its extreme advantage because you're not putting it down. It's so intense and you're so into it that there's no way you're going to be able to break this up into multiple readings. There's no way. And the ending is very satisfying. This is a book that is a dystopian work. I don't know if it's post-apocalyptic. Things have definitely happened and it is a very different world. It conjures up Orwell and Bradbury in its setting, but the story itself, it's beautifully done. The characters are wonderful. The world building in such a short work, being able to build a setting where you know exactly what it is, you know exactly where it is, what it looks like. I think it's a wonderful read. It's totally worth your time. Check it out. Check out everything by Kenzie, seriously. The second work I want to talk about is the book Disasterpieces by Wesley Southard and Wile Young. And look, if you know me at all and you know the circles I run in, you know that Wesley and Wile are friends. And Kenzie's a friend too. Actually, quite a few of the people on this list are my friends. And this isn't me pandering to my friends. I just happen to be blessed with really talented people in my circle. I don't know what to tell you. These are books that I actually sincerely love, and they just so happen to be written by people I'm friends with. It's not me trying to push them forward for the sake of them being my friends. This is me trying to push them forward because these works are worthy of attention. And now Disasterpieces, it's a shorter work as well. It's like 2 short stories, maybe even novelettes. They're very short. One was written by Wesley Southard and one is written by Wile. And they're works that center around disasters, something unfortunately in our modern world, our reality. And these 2 works are they're really good. These guys are both really good at writing action. They're both really good at building tension, but they're both also really good with maintaining empathy and your ability to feel the character's human misery in these stories. I think they were both sensitively done while also maintaining a story that is fast moving and interesting, if that makes any sense. So it's also a very quick read. You can read Wesley's story and then Wile's story in 2 sittings, have them done. There's no putting them down once you start them because of the building of the tension, because of the wait a minute, how's this going to end aspect of it. And that's a mark of 2 really good storytellers, not knowing where you're going, not knowing how it's going to end. You don't want your writers to be trustworthy, where you can always count on it's always going to be a not happy ending or it's always going to be a happy ending. You don't know where it's going, and it makes it a really great read in that way. Disasterpieces. The next one I want to talk about is a book called Autumn Bleeds into Winter by Jeff Strand. So if you were here for the Year of the Werewolf last year, you know Jeff Strand I read a lot of Jeff Strand last year, and I just happened to have this when I had a stack of books here in my office that I wanted to get to, and this was in the pile, so I read it. This was a good book. This is another one where I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know where we were going. I was being led by the nose by the author along this story. So this is a story about, it takes place in Alaska, which is always, like, if you find a book that takes place in Alaska, always read it. It is a great setting for horror just because of the location. But a young boy witnesses his best friend get abducted, and he knows who did it, and it's a whole thing of nobody believes him, nobody's going to help, nobody will help find his friend, and it gets ugly, it gets brutal, it's very violent, it's very dark underbelly of the world kind of storytelling, and I enjoyed every aspect of it, even the ending. It was just like, damn, that is cold. Autumn Bleeds into Winter, Jeff Strand. So the next book I want to talk about, it's not nonfiction. It's not fiction, it's nonfiction. It's called The Successful Novelist by David Morrell. This book gets recommended all the time. It'll come across my social media with other writers going, you have to read this book. If you want to be a writer, you have to read this book. Aside from the elements of style, this is a must. And I kept saying it. I've been doing this for 10 years. Do I really need like a how-to book? But I got it because there's no harm in humbling yourself. And if you don't know, David Morrell, among many other things, he's the person who wrote the book that First Blood, Rambo, is based off of. And he talks very candidly about his struggles as a writer, struggles with writer's block, struggles with imposter syndrome, while also talking about how to handle the business side of all of this. Now, as an indie writer, some of this wasn't applicable to me, but as a writer, full stop, some of this was applicable to me. I actually did find some very interesting tidbits that I'm going to try out this year with my own works because it turned out to be worth it. So if you're a writer, I don't care how long you've been doing this, maybe check this book out. The next book I want to talk about is Hunter of the Dead by Stephen Kozeniewski. Again, Stephen Kozeniewski is a friend, dear friend, and he's also my publisher sometimes. But this book, God, like I'm trying to not get too derailed here, but I love everything that Koz writes. You know, he is one of those writers that defies categorization. And yet I love everything he writes. And this one, I had to message him after I finished it because I loved it so much. It is a vampire book. And it is... the thing that I like about vampire books sometimes, and it's why I love Anne Rice, the Vampire Chronicles, not all of them, but it's something that I love about these stories where the memories of the characters can sometimes span millennia. So a flashback to these beings, it doesn't always just go back to like the 1970s, 1980s. We're going back to a period that predates history sometimes. And that makes it so interesting. But this book, it is about established vampires. They have houses. They're split into houses, kind of like the mafia, but we've seen this before in vampire stories. And they all have this long history, so long that they've forgotten certain things. And they don't remember them as fact. They think of them as myth. And one of them is this character referred to as the Hunter of the Dead. And they call him like a serial killer. And it's this very strange, intense character that can and will murder vampires on sight. No matter how powerful they are, no matter how old and wizened they are, they don't stand up against the Hunter of the Dead. And it's just, there's a lot of history of these characters. And there's a lot of modern day actual humans dealing with these vampires. And I loved this book. Check it out. Seriously, great vampire book. And the last book I want to talk about is The Siren and the Specter by Jonathan Janz. Now, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, obviously I love werewolves, but a subgenre of horror that I cannot pass up is the haunting subgenre. Haunted houses, haunted places, ghosts. Ooh, it's catnip to me. I love it so much. So, admittedly, you know me. I'm easy to please. I'm always happy to read this kind of stuff. I'm happy to be reading something in one of my favorite subgenres. But this book, holy shit. There's no way to intelligently convey to you. I keep turning the pages over here. I'm sorry, I'm playing with something. This book is actually now in my top 3 favorite haunted books ever. This book blew my hair back. It's so good. It's so intense. It's so layered. But more than that, the writing itself, sometimes you read a writer in this genre who makes a meal out of the words that they use. And it makes this very textured, almost chewy work. And you find yourself going back and rereading sentences because the wording used and just the art to the storytelling is amazing. And that's what's going on in this. I loved this as a person who loves the genre, but I loved it as a person who loves words, who loves to read. I thought this book was amazing. And Jonathan Janz is one of those writers in the indie scene. He's a darling, and for perfectly good reason. I haven't read a book by him that I haven't loved. And I went into this one knowing I was going to like it, but I didn't anticipate loving it as much as I did. I couldn't recommend more. I really couldn't. Yes, so that'll be it. I'll be back in June, the 1st of June, to talk about what I've read since then. To keep talking about it, keep recommending, because the horror indie scene just needs more love. We got to talk about it more. So if you've read any of these books, talk about it. Get on social media and scream about it. Tag the authors. Let them know that you appreciated what they did, appreciated their work, appreciated their ideas, their imagination, their execution. Let them know, okay? Just make the world a better place by keeping your authors happy, because not enough people appreciate that, okay? And I'm going to do my part and let these wonderful people know that they have made my life infinitely better just because they write. So that'll be it for me until June, my friends, or something else comes up. Bye.